All right, welcome back to the From the Ground Up podcast. This is a podcast for Dow Smith Company's employees, clients, and friends. Dow Smith Company is a design build firm here in the Depot District of sunny Smyrna, Tennessee. And we design and build churches, medical facilities, and commercial buildings. And today we have a wonderful guest. We have Mr. Jason Surratt, who is the city president of Smyrna for Volunteer State Bank. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate you having me.
So we're going to talk about a few things today, but first I just wanted to talk to you a little bit. I know probably the people that you speak with day in, day out have a lot of questions about banking and about lending, and we've seen a lot of changes even recently, but I know over your long storied career with several different banks in this community, you've probably seen tremendous ups and downs. So when people call you lately and they want to talk about different aspects of your job, kind of what's the overall questions that you're getting a lot about these days, and what are you telling folks?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So my position really entails what I'll call community banking. So I'm not a mortgage person, first mortgage person on your primary home. People ask me a lot of times, well, what do you do? And I say it's easier for me to say what I don't do, which is first mortgages on your home. So if you're purchasing a home, you're going to go through a mortgage company for that typically. Banks have them as well, but they're a designated position for that. Anything else personally, individually, so a home equity line, like a second mortgage, car loan, personal loan, anything like that would be run through me, and anything and everything on the commercial side. So business owner, and even commercial could be you wanting to buy a rental property, right? Something like that that's non-personal asset, revenue producing type asset. So handle a little bit of everything. So the questions I get are all over the board, right? Car loans, home equity lines. A lot of people are looking to tap into equity. Equity is huge in the area right now and has been on a great pace over the last 5 to 8 years especially. And so a lot of people are looking to either sell and move up into something else. And we've seen a lot of people lately wanting to actually just take a look at tapping into their equity and maybe making improvements to what they have instead. If you sell, the other side of it is you've got to buy. And so you're selling at a great price, but you're also buying at a great price for that seller. So a lot of people are looking at making their current home their forever home.
Yeah, and I would imagine in this area you do have a lot of people who are either just happy where they are, or they're waiting for interest rates to come down a little bit more before they make a move. Are you talking to a lot of people in that kind of position who are like, well, I'll just make this house just a little bit better?
Sure, and sometimes the improvements they're making are for the sell, right? They're doing things that they need to, whether it be a kitchen remodel or something that, you're going to get your dollars back out of that. You mentioned rates, and rates are something that the last 2 years we've seen unprecedented increases. The Fed has gone in and I forget how many times, but since March of 22 have consecutively raised rates. Prime, Wall Street Journal Prime, which is a kind of a key indicator in the market, was sitting at 3.25% and had jumped to 8.5% in a matter of 2 years. And inflationary issues, all the recessionary issues, all the discussion about that, we are where we are. And rates have started to come down a little bit. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand, to your point. People waiting until they get a rate that they feel is the best rate, and then going forward. Something that I've heard said before, one of my mentors told me is, you marry the property, you date the rate. Meaning you can always refinance that at a later time, whether it be a commercial building, whether it be your primary residence, a home equity line, whatever you're talking about. If that's what you want, go get it.
Yeah.
Because it might not be there when you're ready to go get it.
Exactly. You're probably talking more on the the residential side, but what are you seeing commercial wise around Smyrna and Rutherford County? It seems to me like prices are still going up.
Yeah, they are. I'll step out from Smyrna Rutherford County even a little bit more and saying Middle Tennessee has sort of always been what I'll call in a bubble a little bit. Even back in 2008 when the housing crash happened, we never saw the highs, the peaks that New York, Florida, California did, but we never saw the valleys either. So while others were peaking and valleying, we were sort of wavering in between. And that has kind of created a bit of a sheltered or a bubble kind of feel for Middle Tennessee. It seems everywhere you go, especially here, specific Rutherford County, Smyrna, there's new developments going on, there's new businesses coming into town, and these are businesses that are bringing employees with them. So it's good for a county's tax base, right, and growth. The only thing better than growth is managed growth. And I think that's the struggle that a lot of people are dealing with right now, is just the expansion is good. How do we make sure that it fits what we have?
Yeah, and it's hard to manage the rapid growth.
Yeah.
That we've had.
Yeah. And that's everywhere. That's again, Rutherford County specific, just because of the roads we drive every day, right? We see it. And traffic on those roads, but multifamily developments that are coming in, commercial transactions that are happening for businesses that are expanding. I mean, all good things. It's just a matter of working through it.
One of the things I always try to talk to people about when we're talking about what we do at Dow Smith Company is the right time to call us. Mm-hmm. And for us, it's the minute you get an idea in your head, really, because a lot of times you'll have people get 3, 4, 5 steps down the road, and then it's like, okay, we can start work from there, or we could turn around and come all the way back and start all over. How do you answer that question? If they're thinking like, hey, it would be cool to open this business or to buy this property or to, even fix up what I've got.
Yeah.
Like when's the right time to start having that discussion with you, and what is that first discussion like?
Yeah. So you guys do a great job of design build, right? I mean, that's the whole premise of your business model, is get in on the front end to help and be able to manage and know all the steps all the way through to the last step. Sometimes bankers will get wind of projects coming. A lot of time we get notified when plans, specs, and budgets are already done, and now they're coming for the financing approval. They've already come and talked with you guys about it. They've already come and worked through all of those steps to say, okay, here's my dollar amount. It's X. Now, let me go talk to the bank about how I finance X. So we don't always hear about projects on the front end. Most of the time, we don't hear about them on the front end. We'll catch them when it's time to start talking about the numbers. And the numbers don't really matter a lot. I mean, they do, but not really when you're in the design phase. You and your team may have the conversation of, well, I think my budget is X. And then you guys work within that budget to see if it's doable. And then at that point, the owner, the borrower, comes to the bank and says, here are my plans, specs, budget. I want to talk to you about financing it.
Right.
And then that's when we jump in and start working with them. And it's great. Again, I'll go to the Smyrna specific. When bankers and architects and contractors all know each other, it works well when you can partner with people that partner with people you've worked with before, and that are going to be quality people.
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
Well, and we always say we'd rather design to a budget than budget to a design.
That's a great point.
Because
yeah.
What happens is you have people that have these great plans with every single thing they ever wanted in them, and then they go meet with you, and they're like, oh, there's no way we could do this.
Yeah, we can get half of that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the plans wind up rolled up in a corner somewhere and never get built.
Yeah.
And so we always like knowing, like, what amount of money are we working with, and then we can get you as much as we can possibly get you of those plans. But But yeah, so that's what I was asking about that. When did you? I feel like I've known you forever, but I was sitting here trying to think like when you first got to Smyrna and which bank you started with when we first got to town.
Yeah, so my banking career started back in 1999, actually, up in Nashville. I was working for an investment bank. Bankers Trust was acquired by Deutsche Bank, and I was on their proof and control team. Think about Wall Street. All of the trades happen all day long. At the end of the day, there are errors that happen throughout the day. That came to my team that I managed on the next day, and we corrected all those errors. So a little more on the analytical side. And so when I started my banking career, I started as a credit analyst, so working on the underwriting of requests for borrowers and new projects. And it was a national bank, and then I moved down to what would be considered a state bank. And that's when we moved to Rutherford County in 2005, and then progressed down to where I am now at Volunteer State Bank, which is a true community bank model. A lot of relationship based. We're not transactional. If someone comes with $1 million request and that's all they're going to do with us, might be a good deal, but we may actually pass on it. We want to be someone's bank. We just don't want to be the transaction for them. And relationships are important, and I think that's built over time and proven records.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about it pretty shortly after you started at Volunteer State, and I think you're such a relationship person that seems like such a great fit for you to do banking that way.
Yeah, we are owned by one individual currently, his family, gentleman named Galen Lawrence, and so we're not publicly traded, so we don't have earnings per share ratios that are monitored on Wall Street and things. Of course, our owner wants a return, but it's a different feel when you're at a community bank model, and there are some bankers who love the corporate banking model. And there are some that like the community bank model, and I fall into the latter.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about community, because it is. Anybody asks me about Jason Surratt, I probably will talk about that more than I even talk about banking, because you're great. Obviously, you're great at what you do. There's no way you would have gotten this far if you weren't great at the banking aspect of what you do. But I think a lot of people know you just from community service and community involvement. And, specifically, I think our paths first crossed through Rotary probably 17, 18 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Why was that? If you were like me, I just wanted to just get to know some people. I almost kind of despise the word networking or even the concept of it. It just doesn't. I've never walked into a room with a stack of business cards and just try to figure out how many I could hand out.
Like a card dealer. You're just like shuffling. Yeah.
And I've always seen that in you, that you're much more interested in just having deep relationships with people, again, versus like transactional kind of things. But why was that important to you personally, but then also strategically, like just from a business stand?
So relationships are absolutely important. I think that when I was a kid, both my parents were heavily involved in volunteerism, right? So whatever the organization, my dad was actually a Rotarian. And so I grew up going to the Saturday morning stream cleanups, the painting at the seniors' home, whatever the projects might have been. I grew up doing that. And so as a kid, you don't understand and appreciate it. As an adult, you do. And I think if everybody gave a little bit more than what they do, it would make such a huge impact in our communities. And there are some people who go way above and beyond. And there are some that don't do any. And to each their own, that's fine. My philosophy has been, I'm going to give when I can, when and where I can. And my kids are going through what I did when I was a kid now. And I tell them every day, you won't understand this yet. One day it'll click and you'll understand why we're here cleaning this stream up, or why I'm involved in this committee or this group or on this board. And so I think it's important for a lot of the nonprofits that don't have the budgets to afford CEOs and 100-person staffs. That's what the volunteerism, that's where that comes in to make a difference. And so I've always been a giver, and I thoroughly believe in it, and my family does too now because I bring them along with me.
Yeah. Well, talk about Rotary specifically.
Yeah.
That's, as I said, where we met, and probably where you've met a lot of people. What is it, because I know you're on a lot of different committees and a lot of different boards and involved in a lot of different things. So what is it about Rotary that's special to you, especially now just coming off of being president?
So I got into I joined the club in 2007, I believe it was, and was a club member for a long time. And they always say that everyone has their Rotary moment, kind of your why moment, your Rotary moment that happens. And that's when you realize there's a difference between being a club member and being a Rotarian. It sounds funny to say it that way, but once you start believing in what you're doing, it just hits differently. And so got involved with the board, had been involved in some committees, was asked to get into the officer rotation, and completed that. And so you learn so much more about the organization, both on a local level, our club, but also our club is part of an international organization. Millions of people worldwide. And it's interesting for me to see the impact that our club can have in a bigger picture. We do stream cleanups locally. We do, helping out with volunteerism, community project events that we have here specific in town. But also it all rolls up into what is a bigger organization. Now, the impact is felt more locally here. The dollars that we raise from the fundraising that we do affect local groups. But it's been great, and I've created, gosh, Taylor, and I would include you in this, some of my closest friends, have come out of this group. And they're people that I know if I needed to call someone, I could call on them. And it's not the motto, service above self. No one does it for themselves. And it's just it's a group of like-minded people who are trying to accomplish something. And that's what's fun. And so going through leadership was great. I'm now actually, I don't even think you know this, I'm now actually taking on a district level role.
Oh, awesome.
So I'll be our assistant district governor for the next 3 years.
Wow.
Was asked to do that a couple weeks ago. And so I'm thrilled that it's just continuing. And so now I'll get to work kind of with multiple clubs. And so I'm excited about it.
What does that look like for you? Is it visiting other clubs?
Yes.
Like
so within our district, there are, of course, you can't manage hundreds of clubs. And so you have assistant district governors that take anywhere from 1 to 5 clubs that are kind of in their pod, if you want to think of it that way. So I'll have all of Rutherford County, which includes our club, and then there are 2 clubs in Murfreesboro that, in essence, I'm kind of their go-to. If they have questions, if they have, of course, each of them has their own standing boards, their own committees, their own policies and procedures. However, they do all roll up to Rotary, to the district level, and then zone and international. So if there's anything that ever needs to be handled on a next level kind of feel for them, that's when it'll involve me. But yeah, absolutely, I'll be going to all of the clubs on a regular basis, meeting with the presidents of the club on a regular basis, just to help. And I think that helps the communication between the 3 clubs. And we don't need to compete against each other. We can join forces on a lot of things. Now, each has their own. Over the years,
we have kind of done some projects together and different.
Each has their own standalone projects, but we also do have a couple joint projects that we pull together. So you can make a bigger impact if you have 3 clubs working together as opposed to each individually.
Awesome. Well, I don't know how I'm going to get us into this, and I don't know how I'm going to get us out of it, but we have to talk about, as important as relationships are to you, and as important as Rotary is to you. I felt like we could end this podcast talking a little bit about Carolyn Peebles, who recently passed away and was you know, I was telling some people, I don't even think we were close friends, but she just always made me feel like a close friend.
Absolutely.
And she made everybody feel like a close friend, even people she probably barely knew. And but you and Carolyn were close friends. You know, were legitimately close friends, and you know, she would have become our next Rotary president. I was really excited about working under her on that, and to just maybe try to give back some little tiny piece to her, you know, that she's given to so many people. But just talk about Carolyn a little bit.
Yeah.
I would really
Gosh.
appreciate it. I know you've probably talked a lot about her the last week, but
Yeah. So this past weekend, we found out that Carolyn passed away unexpectedly, and it was a shockwave to say the least. You know, we have over 100 members in our club, and I think she connected with everyone. You know, and it might have been on a different way. Should have been on a different way because it's with everyone individually. But she and I were, she was in our officer rotation, so she was scheduled to be next year's, starting July 1, club president for our club, which I was excited about because being the assistant district governor, I would have been working right side by side with her. And I told her about it a couple weeks ago, and her eyes lit up, and she said, "You're not leaving me." And so just a devastating impact. I mean, she was such a light as an individual and a leader in the club. It's just, it's devastating to think about the loss, the person, the position. It's tough, and everybody is going through it right now. I mean, it's just, outside of our club, you know, her church, her family, her friends. I mean, if you're looking online, I mean, you can't almost go without seeing someone talking about just how wonderful of a person she was. She made everybody feel like family, and to your point that you were talking about before, you know, she had a way of comforting you, welcoming you, no matter what the situation was, and she was a shining light for sure that is greatly missed.
Yeah, I've shared with this with a few people that there was one year at the fish fry where I was just able to tell her I love words and learning about, you know, origins of words and stuff, and we were talking about the word enthusiasm, and I was like, "Do you know where that word comes from?" And she was like, "No," and I said, "Well, it's from entheos, which basically means of God," and I was like, there's no better way to describe her to me than she was always so enthusiastic about everything, and I know that came from her faith.
Absolutely.
And, which was not a preachy faith or a
She lived it.
judgmental faith. It was a faith that you could see from 10 miles away. If you just saw her coming, you just knew.
And she lived it day in and day out. You didn't feel like it was someone who was just talking about it. That's how she lived. And I think that's what gives a lot of friends and family a little bit of peace as well. And just knowing that she's where she should be.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she made, I don't know, she just made, she did little things to make heaven on earth here, you know, in our community and in our club, and with her family and with her church. And I think it's one of those things where the more, as you said, there's going to be people that we don't even know and didn't even know what she was up to who are going to start saying like, "Oh yeah, I remember that time she did this for me."
Yeah.
And, just one of those people.
Absolutely.
You just wonder how she fit so much into 24 hours every day.
Yeah.
But listen, I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
And talking about something that seems so insignificant now as banking.
Yeah.
But it is a relationship thing, and I think I've talked to several people this week who've said like, "Oh, that's what Carolyn would want me to do." You know, just in passing different things that we've said, and I think that I think she'd be really proud of what you're doing at the district level, but also in your career.
Yeah.
And the way that you put people over pretty much everything else. And so again, thanks for coming on, talking about banking. I hope if people are considering some of those things that you talked about, they'll give you a call. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably easiest way is just through
yell Jason Surratt.
I'll come running down the street. Facebook is probably a lot of people's easiest way to connect. Call the bank and ask for me. That's fine too. But yeah, I mean, all the social medias, platforms, LinkedIn, and
wherever
all those.
They are, they'll see you around.
Yeah, but more than happy to help any way I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on today, and thanks everybody for listening.